Phone's off. A bit nervous about this bit of technology. Phone's off. Okay, so now I've got to work out. Oh, I haven't got the sound double. Can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay, we're good to go. I think I'm just going back over to this one. Hey, good to see you. It's Richard from BTFI here. Monday night, 8 o'clock, usual place, usual time. And today we are talking about some slightly different things. So another spin. Last week we tackled GDPR. This week we're having a little bit of a dive into money, which is an interesting one because you see that there aren't many grey hairs on my head, but I know that a lot of people, having got their tax returns in, or maybe not got their tax returns in by January the 31st, will have some grey hair or will have torn out half of their head of hair because it's been such a frustrating, traumatic experience. Now, you can see I'm joined by Tina Weeks. Hi, Tina.
Hi, thanks for having me, Richard.
Oh, it's a pleasure always. So we'll hear from Tina in a moment and why she's with us. But what I know is, as an entrepreneur, actually as a creative at heart, money, numbers, process, systems, the rigor of things doesn't really interest me very much. I just want to play and be creative and have fun and make the world a better place. But I've realized in 45 years that actually managing money is quite important. Now, I never had a problem with money in 45 years ever, but I've never done anything proactive about it. I've always kind of got along. It's always been all right. You know, money comes in and I use that money to pay for things that I need to pay for. And then I give some to HMRC and I give some for a bit of tax and I give some for the mortgage. And then I've got a bit left over, hopefully, and on we go. And there has been a realization of mine probably in the last year or so that at home, certainly, and in the business, we need to get a bit more rigor around it. We needed to get a bit more planning. I need to turn that off because that's annoying. I needed to get a bit more planning, a bit more control, a bit more in the driving seat of money, and actually starting to plan out a bit more and do some thinking, longer term thinking about what we needed to do with our life and therefore how we start to bring that to fruition. So here we are, however many months on, having met Tina, Kelly and I sat down and we did it in a really kind of unmoney way, actually. I thought we'd sit down and go, how much money have you got in your bank account? And where are you going to spend that penny? And where are you going to spend that pound? We didn't do any of that. We sat down and we answered some really weird questions about, oh, I don't know, what did we want to do with our life and what was important to us? And if we only had X number of months left to live, how would we spend it and what would be important and what are some of the things we want to do? And it was just kind of like completely freeing. And then we sat down and worked out, so what has to be true in our personal life and in our business life of how we make money and then what we do with it in order to facilitate that, which was a bit of an eye-opener for me. A massive realization. So here we are today in February 2018 with a bit of control over our finances. And there's been a lot of talk in the BTFI group. If you're not a member of the group, we'll pop the link in below. Come and join us. We're a group of action takers, movers, shakers, game changers, thought leaders, people that basically want to offer support and make the world a better place and also want some support and some help. But there's been a lot of talk in there because it's got such a real entrepreneurial feel about what do we do in order to look after our money, make more money, do the right things with our money in order to get the life we want. So it felt right to bring Tina on tonight, who can help us make some sense of that and give us some ideas and some thoughts and tell us a bit about how she and Serenity Finance is shaking up the world a bit. So Tina is a financial life planner and we've been working together for a few months now, right? I don't know, no, more than that, like 8-9 months.
Yeah, it's nearly a year actually.
Is it that long? Goodness. Actually, why don't you tell everyone that's watching a couple of minutes about who you are and why you're here.
Okay, so I'm Tina Weeks, and that is what I call myself, a financial life planner, which is quite different to your normal financial advisor or IFA. And I run a business called Serenity Financial Planning. And all of us advisors that are part of this business work in a very different way, in that everything we do is about helping you do all the things that you want to do and help you identify what's important to you and how you want to live your life. And then we bring the money in and work with you and help you to make it happen. So that's it in a nutshell.
And that actually was the bit for me that was massively freeing, that we didn't go straight into thinking about money and numbers. We made the money almost like the money needed to mean something. It needed to plug into that bigger purpose piece, because actually without that, it's still just moving money around. Now it feels like my relationship is, I'm not just moving money around, I'm thinking about it in a very different way and a very different connection with it, because I know what it can facilitate and bring about and do for us.
Yeah, and the truth is sometimes people do still come to us with a specific money issue. So there's that urgency and we need to talk about the numbers straight away. So they'll come to us and say, can you look at my pension? I've just had this from my employer, or I've inherited this money, or I've just got divorced and have this money. What should I do with it? And in those cases, it'll be a little bit different to the work we did with you, because that's an urgent thing. We need to deal with it straight away. But once that's dealt with, then we do still come back to those initial conversations and really try and build that relationship with someone. Because for me to be able to advise you about your money, I need to really be able to understand your life and understand what's important to you, who's in your life, who's important to you, what about you and the things that you want to do, who do you want to be, how do you want to live, and how can we use your resources to best make that happen? And sometimes it's just about the conversation. Sometimes the money piece doesn't come in at all, which is so refreshing for us as advisors, I think, as well as the clients that we work with.
Yeah, I bet. A completely different game to play on both sides. So guys, if you've got questions, post them and we'll get them throughout, and I'll put them to Tina. So keep doing that. I've got some questions I'm going to ask. So guys, you fire away with stuff if you want, and we'll pick them up as we go along. So I've actually got loads of questions for you, Tina, because I know that
fire away.
Because it's such a hot topic. So the first one I had for you is actually, why do you think so many people are afraid of tackling the numbers and really taking ownership of their finances?
I think it's because most people haven't been taught how to do it. And like with anything that you've never done before, you've never been shown how to do, there's that fear around it. And you think it's so much more scary and difficult simply because you've just not been taught how to do it. And to top it all off, there's just so much confusion out there from the media, from the banks, even from the government. And it's really hard for people to know who to trust and how to do things. And sometimes that makes people so fearful that they end up doing nothing at all.
So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right in the education piece. I don't know now whether schools are better at educating kids earlier. Did you do that? I know you've got kids. Did you do that with your own children in helping them think about how they manage their finances and their pennies from a really early age?
Well, mine are still really young. They're 13 and 14, but they've been hearing me talk about this their whole life. So they've got a bit of pressure to meet up to expectations. But yeah, even basic things like going through, with them what to do with their pocket money. And we always said to them, half of it is for saving, half of it is for spending. And our kids always had 2 money boxes, so that they separated out that money, and they can understand that there's, if they save up, they can actually do something bigger with the money that they save.
So it is about the real early age stuff. And in some ways, 13, 14, nowadays in stuff is actually quite late, isn't it? It's like, how do we get them even at 5, 6 years old to start having a sense of the value in money and the saving and spending piece?
But actually, even if they don't have any education on that piece, or we don't spend the time with them, what we all have experienced, even without even realizing it, is some subconscious messages about money that we've picked up on. So, for example, we might have seen how our parents dealt with money, and that will have an influence on how we feel about money. You might hear things like, never a lender nor a borrower be, and that's made a difference. So many sayings like that we have. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, and all sorts of things like that, and they influence how we feel about money, and then how we make decisions about money going forward. So some of the things that we do is try to get people to notice those things. What is influencing their decisions? What have they brought with them that is now maybe hindering them and not serving them as well as a relationship with money could do?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think it's funny. My own relationship with money has been that I just have never paid a great deal of attention to it. It's just this thing. And if I think about how my father managed money, and although he was actually behind the scenes quite on it, he would never talk about it. So all I remember was that every Thursday he would put my mum's housekeeping in cash on the dresser in their bedroom. I just remember it. He'd put it there, it'd be laid out, and that would be it. And that would be like it would be the only conversation even they would have. And my mother now on her own actually struggles now to make sense of money and finances because she was never a part of it.
I hear those sorts of stories. I love hearing stories like that because it really shows me the different messages that people have picked up along the way. And of course, that's going to make a difference to you and how you think about money. Absolutely.
So you said a moment ago, I asked you about why do people have generally not a great relationship with money. And one of the pieces was about trusting organizations and trusting financial institutions that are doing the right thing. And we're so blinded by choice, aren't we? We're drowning in choices of what to do with our money and what banks and interest rates and investments. And actually, it feels like a minefield. But this whole bit around the trust piece is I think is really important because in some ways we've grown not to trust organizations. They haven't always been honest with us. People don't know whether they've always got best interests at heart. And almost the financial industry has become a bit of a place to play, and there are few that seem to be really jolting it and disrupting it and challenging us to do money and do banking differently. What are your thoughts on that?
Richard, what's that trust barometer that people talk about? Someone said the most recent one was published recently, and financial services is still right down on the bottom of the list, along with dentists and estate agents, I think. But generally what I'm trying to say is that trust for financial services is still really, really low. It hit rock bottom and it sort of stayed there for years and years. My biggest bugbear is that it's not just about trust, but it's also transparency. It's really hard for everyday people to be absolutely sure that what we're being told is true, and they can't see behind the scenes to be sure that what they're being told is actually the true story. There was some recent regulation that was brought in called MiFID II at the beginning of this year, and so many people have got their arms up in arms about it, because what it's meant is that all financial institutions have to disclose all their fees to their clients. So when I sit down with you, I'm not just going to disclose the fees that I'm going to charge you, which I do anyway, but now I'm going to tell you the fees that the fund managers are charging you and any platforms or other third parties that we're using. What's wrong with that? I mean, as a financial planner, I'm used to telling people what I'm going to charge them because it's very explicit. We don't take commission. It's not taken in a backhanded or non-transparent way. So I have no problem with it. But the fund managers have never had to do this before, or other people that take their money in not such a transparent way have never had to do this before, and they're up in arms about it. I think it's great. It's about time people knew exactly what they were paying for financial services across the board. This is definitely good news for me, but people should ask the questions too.
It's a great shake-up, isn't it? And much needed. And as you say, the natural response for those that feel like they've got something to fear or to hide is to push back and be stroppy and be belligerent about it. And clearly there's a bit of that going on at the moment.
Yeah.
So in terms of jolting the industry, actually, I think one of the things we also really liked before we even met you was that it felt like you were doing this really differently. The whole experience and that, again, that building relationship with our own finances was different. So why did you set up Serenity?
Well, that's a good question, because when I think about it, what I wanted to do, when I wanted to do this work, what I actually wanted to do, as cheesy as it sounds, what I wanted to do was help people. I wanted to sit down in front of someone, advise them, guide them, and help them in a way that actually made a difference. And I looked around and I couldn't find an organisation that I could go to where that would be my remit. That was what I was supposed to do. It was always about trying to sell some products to someone, sell them a pension or an investment, earn some commission by doing it, have targets. It was all about the money. And for me, it was never about the money. Even when it's about the money, it's not about the money, you know? So I looked around, I couldn't find anywhere. Oh gosh, here we go. And I looked around and I couldn't find anywhere. So I thought, right, I'll set up my own business. And I launched Serenity Financial Planning in 2012 after running a mortgage stroke IFA business and going through the credit crunch, which was an experience, I tell you. So set up in 2012 and we haven't looked back since. It hasn't been easy, because trying to explain to people what we do when they've never experienced it before is really hard. But more and more people are starting to Google terms like financial coaching, financial planning, life planning, and that's how they come across us, which is great news.
When you talk about the credit crunch, what did you learn from the credit crunch? Because I don't know what your views are on the future in terms of whether we're going to have, whether there's going to be more, whether there's going to be another kind of the bottom will drop out again, whether it will be worse than before, not as bad as before. What was your learning from the last time that has made you more kind of buckle up, foolproof, resilient to the future?
Well, I learned so much going through it myself. This particular market correction was the one that made the biggest difference to me. I was in business, I had a family, I had a mortgage, and all of these things meant that it had a much bigger impact on me. I mean, we were pushed almost to the brink of bankruptcy. So I learned a lot along the way. And I also learned how to see it from the other side, which meant that a lot of the work that I do with clients now, the basics around budgeting and expenditure, I learned from having gone through it myself. And coming back to what I think about what's going to happen, you know, our investment philosophy is that we can't time the markets, but we know big events are going to happen. We are expecting a crash, dare I say the word. We are expecting the crash. What are we advising our clients? We're advising clients, if they have a globally diversified portfolio, to just stay put. It's knee-jerk reactions that cause people to do things that actually end up costing them money. And, you know, and the news and the media, you know, they fuel this fear that we all have that then gives, you know, causes us to do things that means that we all lose money in the end. And it goes round and round and round and no one's better off. So our advice to clients is there is a crash coming, but it's normal. We've seen crashes before, and that's how the markets work. They do this every so often, and then they recover. It's just about time. So our advice, if you've got it set up properly, like our clients have, to do nothing.
Okay, all right, good call. So we've got a couple of questions which we'll take. Let's take these ones now. There's a question from Sam, which is, what do you enjoy most about your role?
Hi, Sam. I enjoy so much about my role. Ever since I've been doing it, working in this way, I've had more fun than I've ever had before. It's a great way to work.
I bet there aren't many financial advisors that say that.
But it's true. I love what I do. And what I love most is when I work through everything with a client and present a solution to them and describe it to them in detail. We call it lighting the torch. And when I see their face light up and they're almost bouncing off the walls, it's brilliant. You know what? That is contagious. I love it. And that's, you know, that's what I get out of it. It's such a buzz.
That's great. I like that. I think you lit our torch.
Oh, there's still more to come.
Is there more? Goodness. Yeah. It's too hot, almost too hot to handle. Right, so we've got another question from, thanks for that one, Sam. I hope that answers what you wanted to know. Sandra's asked, okay, so Sandra, hi Sandra, she's clearing debt and also wants to buy a house. Should she pay off the debt or save for the deposit?
Oh, it's a bit of a catch-22 situation. There's so many people in this situation. I find that sometimes psychologically doing a bit of both works. So if you're paying a bit of the debt and doing a little bit of saving, then psychologically it feels great to see the debt coming down and the savings going up. But sometimes if your debt is really expensive, the first thing you should do is have a look at how much interest you're being charged, if any. And if it's quite high, then actually, even though psychologically feels better to have a bit of savings, then paying off your debt would be the best advice. Now, if you have a time scale in mind for buying a house, again, that might err you on one side of that decision. And you might find that even if your debt's expensive, you need to save up to be able to put your deposit down for a house. But be careful. Sometimes when you go to borrow money to buy a house, they take into account the debt that you have. So you might have to pay it off. So it's a balancing act, really. There's no right or wrong answer here.
And when you say about if the interest is quite high, what do you deem to be high interest, or a kind of a point where you go,
well, I'm one of those people that hates paying interest, full stop. So anything above zero, and I go, ah! But gone are the days where we had 0% credit cards with no arrangement fees. So if you're paying anything really more than 5, 6, 7%, the quicker you can get it down. But I don't know how many people remember that. Certainly in our parents' days, they were paying 16, 17% for mortgages. And yes, it was painful, but that's how it was. So I think we've got used to really low interest rates. And even for me to say 5, 6, 7% is high, some people would snigger and say, you don't know anything.
in the olden days?
In the old days, we paid half our wages went to interest.
Okay, so there are a lot of people actually that rather than tackle their financial issues, or kind of you face them out, even if it's not even a problem, but just to kind of just get a grip of their finances, the easy way is just to bury their head in the sand. And I know I've done that in my life in the past, not even when there was a massive problem, but just to go, I forget it and hope that it will go away. What advice would you give them?
Well, the first bit of advice I would give them is to consider getting on top of it and why you would want to do that, because knowledge is power, without a doubt. If you have that knowledge, even if you don't like what you find out initially, knowing where you're at means you are able to move forward. So my advice would be just consider starting getting to grips with it, so that you can have more power and control about where your life's going. If you're a business owner and you're not in touch with the financials, you can't plan and you can't cash flow, you don't know what your profits are, you don't know how to set your margins. There's so much you can't do as a business owner if you don't have those numbers at your fingertips. As a business owner, you should know those numbers almost on a daily basis.
They say that Dragon's Den.
They do, but it's true.
Got no place here, but it's like that's a basic, right?
But I have business owners that take money out of their business without even knowing if the business can support that, or don't take money out of the business when the business can support it. You need to know your numbers, and you need to be able to do it in a way that enables your business to grow, because ultimately it's there to support you. From a personal point of view, if you've got your head in the sand, actually what you're doing is you're living just for today. You're getting by from day to day, month to month. And if you earn tons and tons of money and there's always surplus and you never have to worry about it, fair enough. But if you're spending all the money that you get each month and you're living on this day-to-day basis, what you're not doing is creating what we call disposable income. So look at what comes in and what goes out. If there is anything left over, that is disposable income. That is the magic money. That's the money that we use to build the life that you want, either by creating additional income for retirement or more ad hoc things that you want to do now, or helping out your children or your family, or even philanthropic things. Without disposable income, if you spend everything you get each month, and some people spend even more, which is another conversation, then actually what you're doing is you're just living day to day.
Yeah, and that was, I loved that bit when we sat down and you challenged Kelly and I to think about, so actually what, what adventures do you want to go on, or do you want to pay for Mia's wedding, or do you want to buy her a house or buy her a car or give her money for a deposit, and actually going, well, actually, if we're to give her this amount, and then kind of factoring all of that into, so what money choices do we need to make today in order to get to that point, was just, I can't tell you actually how freeing that was, and that sense of control, that sense of we're driving it and we can steer it is.
That's great. It was Kelly actually that used a term that I've been using with other people, which is reverse engineering everything back to today. So that is actually what we were doing, but I'd never used that term before. So thanks, Kelly.
Good term. It's copyrighted though.
Oh, maybe I won't use it. Any other questions?
We've got no other questions at the moment, other than someone asking if I could speak up, because Tina's louder than you and I'm quieter.
Oh, I hear that all the time. Oh no, not again. I'm louder than the other person.
Generally, though, you are louder than me, and I'm quite quiet and reclusive. Okay. So another question about Serenity. How does Serenity work differently to other organisations that do similar things? Although I don't know of any that do similar things, but
there aren't many that work in exactly the same way that we do. We say that we're the largest financial life planning company in the UK, and we're still only 8 advisors scattered around the UK, but we're still only 8, which shows you then that the other companies that do what we do are actually even smaller. I'm hoping this is going to grow and people are going to become more and more aware and demanding of what a financial advisor or financial planner or whatever terminology people are using to describe themselves, what they should be doing for you and how they should be supporting you. What we do different is we spend a lot of time with people, really getting to know them and understanding everything about them, so that when we build a financial plan, it's not just relevant, it's motivational, and it inspires them to really go forward and live that life that they visualized. Because even though we manage the money and we know the money, we have the technical expertise, for us, that's just an enabler. It's just that what we're going to use to make all this other stuff happen. And that's what we do differently. And I'm still shocked to find out, actually, how many other businesses think that's really weird. How many other financial advisory businesses think that's strange. In fact, a lot of people think I'm weird because I'm running my business based on a metric that isn't associated with money, and that's the relationship I have with clients. The crazy thing is it makes my business profitable, because once I have those relationships with people, these are long-term relationships, and by making my business profitable, it means that I'm around to support these people, and then it's a sort of a symbiotic relationship, and it works. This is not just, I think someone called it pixie dust selling and crazy things like that. It isn't like that. This is about giving people what they need and understanding people as opposed to be tied to the money.
And it's funny, isn't it? In many other walks of life currently, we would say the real game-changing pieces, because there are a ton of people offering the same services, the same products. The game-changing is so much about the relationship. And that element, if we get that element right, why wouldn't we keep going back to that same individual or that same business? And I think financial selling was so much the transaction of flog you a mortgage, flog you this, an investment, and that was it, kind of a very cold deal. And I think you are doing it as such a different way that builds that connection and that bond, and then the other stuff is in many ways quite secondary.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even expect people to have certain level of assets before we work with them. They have to be able to afford our fees, and I wish we could open it up further, but obviously we run a business and we're still restricted by that. But other than that, we don't expect people, some firms say you have to have 500,000, 250,000, 2 million, whatever, before they will even work with you. And I find that it just means it cuts out so many people that I'd like to help. So our proviso is, if you could pay our fees, we're happy to work with you. And that hopefully means that so many more people can access this work than used to be the case.
Yeah. Okay. So another question then. So maybe this is our last question. So what bit of action could people take right now, practical, that can get them back in the driving seat of managing their finances?
Okay, so I mean, there's so much that they could do, but let's try and make it really simple.
Yeah.
First of all, on the assumption that people want to become more aware and get to grips with this, there are two really simple exercises. And both of these are so that you can get on top of it and find out exactly where you're at. So finding out where you're at is one of the most important things, because that's the starting point. So the first thing is to establish what your net worth is. So look at everything that you own, we call that assets, and look at everything that you owe, liabilities. So document all your assets, document your liabilities. The difference between the two is your net worth, and that's the magic money. That's the money that is going to help you do all the things that you want to do. And then just look at your income and expenditure. So the net worth exercise was exercise number 1. Exercise number 2.
If we do that bit and then we go negative, what does this change step 2?
It doesn't, because all we're doing here is establishing ground zero. Where are you at right now? And that might be a negative. But remember, knowledge is power. And once you know that situation, you know how to move forward. And if you can't, then there's different ways that you can get support and education, either online or using someone like me face to face, so that you can move forward. The commitment is about moving forward. And to do that, first of all, you establish where you are. So find out where you are with your net worth, and then find out where you are with respect to income and expenditure. How much is coming in and how much is going out each month? It sounds so simple, but nobody really does this. It's called budgeting. You need to work out how much you're spending and then make a decision about how much you want to spend. Ideally, what we want to do is to create some more magic money, disposable income, because that's the money that we will use to do the financial planning with. But first of all, you've got to figure out where you're at. So what's your net worth? Do you have any disposable income? If not, what can you do to edge yourself a bit more forward to start creating it? And if you have plenty of disposable income, what can you do with it that's going to make all your goals and your ambitions actually come to life?
Okay, great. So that's the second part of that exercise. For a lot of people, it might be making some really simple adjustments. It may go, well, actually, right now I'm not in a position to bring in more unless we start selling things on eBay or taking on a part-time job. But I can probably, for most of us, reduce what we're spending out, whether it's we stop buying that coffee or we stop buying that bar of chocolate or we don't do it every day. And I know that there's always those stats around Christmas of the amount that people are spending. And if you didn't have your coffee every day, you'd say, but actually those numbers are quite substantial, aren't they, when we start to add it all up?
But bearing in mind, most of us do go and buy a coffee or something while we're out, and we do that most times. Actually, yeah, we get bored of those stats at Christmas, but it's so true that small changes can actually end up with a big change in the end. It's just sometimes we need someone to be accountable to. And that's really why I set up the business, so that I can partner with people and help them do this stuff, help them with the basics of teaching them how to budget, teaching them how to manage bank accounts, all those things that we consider that everyone knows how to do, but not everyone does, but also help them with the more complex things like how to invest, how to design a portfolio, when to use pension, tax and how it affects them, and all those sorts of things, and a million other things in between.
Okay. It's brilliant. I love how you do what you do. I love that you are trailblazing the whole kind of financial space and industry and doing it differently, and other people will stop and laugh and snigger and go, oh, it's pixie dust. And that's really cool, right? Because you're out there doing it, you know that it's working, you're building the relationships, people are seeing getting back in control, getting that awareness and back in the driving seat again. So I love the way you do it. I know for us, it's really worked in us getting our head around it, and you supported us a lot last year with 3 weddings and a house move.
Yeah.
Those days are going, help us today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure working with both of you. Thank you.
Oh, we got one more. It's either one more question or something.
Oh, one more question.
I'm speaking too loud now, probably. Do you help people? Oh yeah, there's more to it. Do you help people invest money? And what is your opinion on Bitcoin?
Oh, I'll start with Bitcoin. For me, it's another craze. You know, there is a place for it, but for most of us that are finding out about it now, it's a bit too late. You know, it's already starting to show signs of wobbling, and these cryptocurrencies in general, they create this hurrah, and everyone gets so excited and everyone jumps on the bandwagon. This way of investing is not the best way to build a diversified portfolio that will stand you in good stead for the long term. If you want to buy a Bitcoin or invest some money in that way, go ahead, but do it with money that you are prepared to lose. And then it's just a bit of fun, and you're not going to be stressing about it every day when the values go up and down. And what was the first bit of the question, Richard?
You help people invest money.
Absolutely. We manage money for our clients. So we have a specific investment philosophy. We use what we call evidence-based investing. So anyone who's interested, you could Google it. There's tons of information. And for me, it's about looking at the academic evidence that supports this way of investing, and not following active fund managers that think they can, you know, call the markets, but of course they can't. They don't have a crystal ball. So we invest in a different way. And actually, yes, we do invest and manage our clients' money.
Yeah, okay, great. So the Bitcoin piece, you think we've kind of missed the big moment of making the big cash?
Well, the thing is, we just don't know. That's the problem. It could go through the roof tomorrow. It could go right through the floor. We just don't know. And that's what applies to investments generally. We don't know. Therefore, if you put all your money in one particular thing and we don't know what's going to happen, it could go one way or the other. So that diversified approach, I can't stress enough. There's so much evidence to support that the biggest return that you'll get on your investment is through considered asset allocation. That means a little bit in everything.
Okay. All right, we're going to wrap up there. It's been really great and really helpful. Guys, girls, you might have more questions. Post them underneath. Tina will be tagged. She'll get to see them, and I'm sure we'll respond to you. We'll put a link to Tina's website, which you can go and have a look at and check out and get in touch and ask more questions if that's what you want to do. I think it would be really valuable if at some point in the next month or so, Tina and I will do a deep dive webinar where we'll go in a bit further into what you can do. So that first step of kind of know where you're at, raise awareness, understand how the terrain lies. We'll go into a bit more, so what next? And I guess some of those core pieces around actually that relationship with money piece is so important. Actually, almost the next piece, it feels like it's quite simple in terms of the practical steps. But that first bit about actually how do we change our relationship with money is the key. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I know it's really scary. I absolutely do not want to make light of the fact that this is a source of fear for many people, but there's tiny little steps forward, noticing where you're at and trying to change things slowly.
Brilliant. You've been absolutely great. You still are, even.
Oh, thanks.
8 minutes. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a lovely rest of evening. Folks, thanks for joining us too. Again, keep commenting if you're watching this on a replay. Still post your questions and we'll get back to you with a response. Have a super duper week. We will see you again at 8 o'clock next week. For those of you that are not a member of the BTFI group, come over and join us. Where the link will be in the comments below. Come and say hello. We're a friendly bunch that will give you big hugs, big love, and also wallop your backside when you need it. So, Tina Weeks, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tina. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.